Now's the time to incorporate your legs and shoulder exercises into your overall program. Our champions were going to show you and tell you exactly what are the best exercises to accomplish that.
Quadriceps are a four-headed muscle, which is located in front of the thigh. It originates at the pelvis and attaches below the knee. The main function of the quadriceps are to straighten the leg.
The quadriceps femoris, four muscles on the anterior thigh, extend the leg. The sartorius, which passes obliquely across the anterior thigh, extends and flexes the thigh.
The basic one-joint isolation movement for the quadricep involves the straightening of the lower leg, with the knee joint as the primary point of rotation. The leg straightens and extends without any involvement of the hip joint, glutes, or the hamstrings. The basic two-joint movement for quadriceps is the press. It involves both the knee joint area and the hip area as well. Leg exercises include leg press and various types of squats. Actually, the leg press exercise involves a lot of different muscles, affecting it to a different degree depending on where you are in your range of movement. In the upper part of the range of motion, down to the point where the knee is bent at about a 90-degree angle, the primary stress is on the quadricep. As you go lower than this, the knee bends even more. The stress shifts back to the hamstrings at the back of the leg. At the lowest position, the glutes end up doing most of the work.
Some bodybuilders have achieved the proportions which allow them to do heavy leg press and squat movements through a very long range of motion without damage to the knee. But for most of you, heavy quadriceps training should be done through a more limited range of motion. Go down only to the point where the knee is at a 90-degree angle. At this point, the thighs are parallel to the floor. The back of the leg can then be worked with different exercises like hack squats. Hack squats use the lower range of motion with much lighter weights to protect the knee.
Squats are the primary mass builder for the quadriceps muscle. For best results, stand with your feet wide enough apart for good balance, toes pointed forward, and when you do your squats, keep your head up and back straight. Try not to bend forward from the waist. As you bend your knees, go down only to about the point where your knees are at a 90-degree angle, thighs parallel to the floor. This is the range of motion in which the quadriceps work with the most intensity. Any lower, and you begin to work the back of the leg instead of the front of the thigh. At the bottom of the movement, come to a complete stop, then press back up again to the starting position. Don't bounce at the bottom, or try to press upward before you come to a stop. Squats give you great results, but doing an exercise with a heavy barbell balanced across the back of your shoulders means you have to concentrate extra hard on strict technique, complete balance, and full control.
One of the exercises where we see a number of injuries is the squat, and the reason being is people forget that the head is the center of balance in their body. When they allow their head to tilt forward, it changes the spinal curvature all the way down, changes their pelvic angle, and changes the whole biomechanics of that particular lift. For instance, if I'm doing a squat and I tilt my head down, my ankles may have a tendency to invert or evert. If they invert, then what happens is my kneecaps may start to move towards each other, and that can cause a strain on the ligaments and cartilage in the inner knee. Now with my head tilting forward even more, my pelvis angle changes and I lose that proper lumbar lordotic curve, or that curve in my low back that keeps my back powerful and strong during the biomechanics of that lift. So what I've done with this simple change in head positioning, I bowling balled my head forward, changed the angle that my shoulders are so I'm not supporting the bar properly. My whole spinal curvature has changed, my pelvic angle has changed, my knees are now valgusing or going towards the center, and my ankles are starting to spin under me. This is injury in the making.
Doing squats on a Smith machine, you still get the sensation of training with a free weight, but the fact that the bar is controlled by the vertical track allows you to do a number of variations of the exercise. For example, you can vary your foot position. Putting your feet a little further forward for the exercise takes some of the stress off the knee joints. You can also position your feet somewhat closer together, which puts more emphasis on the quadriceps rather than muscles such as the hip flexors. Although advanced bodybuilders are great fans of Smith machine training, the fact that you don't have to control the bar as you do in barbell squats makes this a good exercise for beginners who may not yet have the strength or confidence to handle squats with free weights. For ultimate quadriceps isolation, try doing front squats using a Smith machine. Hold the bar across the front of your shoulders rather than behind and position your feet close together. This technique not only isolates and increases training intensity in the thigh muscles, it also takes a lot of stress off the back, which makes this a popular exercise for individuals who may be experiencing some sort of back problem.
You may consider using a weight belt when you're doing squats in order to stabilize a low back, especially if you have a weak low back area.
The leg press exercise uses the same basic two-joint movement as squats. However, since you're using a machine rather than trying to balance a weight across your shoulders, you can generally work more strictly with this exercise and with more weight as well. As with Smith machine squats, leg press machines allow you the option of varying your foot position quite a bit. Closer together, further forward, toes straight ahead, or turned outward. What position works best for you is generally a matter of personal preference and individual physical proportion, so try different positions to see which you like best. There are many different kinds of leg press machines. Incline as demonstrated here, vertical where you lie on your back and press upward, horizontal, and even standing leg press machines. Basically, they all do about the same thing. Which kind you prefer is largely a matter of individual preference. However, as a general rule, the closer the machine feels to training with a free weight, the better it will usually be for developing fundamental mass and strength.
I double my weight on a leg press than I do with a squat because it is more of a controlled movement. You don't have to worry about balancing. If you have a back problem, a lower back problem, or any knee problems that I do have, I usually find myself on the leg press more so than the squat rack now.
Leg extensions is one of the primary one-joint isolation exercises for the quadriceps. A basic function of the thigh muscles is simply to straighten the leg. That's what you do with leg extension. The exercise is really nothing more than straightening the leg against the appropriate amount of resistance. However, to get the most out of this exercise, concentrate on achieving a full peak contraction at the top of the movement. When your legs are straight and quads fully contracted, give a little extra crunch to work the muscles to the maximum. And during the negative part of the movement, don't just let the weight drop back to the starting position. Resist on the way down. In fact, you should lower the weight noticeably slower than you lifted it.
To help get the separation into my quadriceps, I do a lot of extensions, leg extensions, and I make sure that I hold a peak at the top just to make sure you're squeezing everything at the top to get the separations and the cuts out in your legs, and a slower movement to let it down. So you're doing more so of a negative reaction on the down movement and blasting it out and holding that peak at the top.
Lunges involve standing with your feet together, taking a step forward, and then bending your knees so that the knee of the trailing leg comes to the floor or almost to the floor, and then pushing back up to the starting position. Some bodybuilders like doing a full set of repetitions with one leg, then repeating the exercise with the other leg. Others prefer alternating first one leg and then the other throughout the set. Either way works fine. It's mostly a matter of individual preference. You can do lunges holding a barbell across your shoulders or holding 2 dumbbells by your side, whichever you prefer. But what makes the biggest difference in how lunges affect your muscles is how long a step you take. The shorter the step, the more you isolate the quadriceps, as with a leg extension. The longer the step, the more you bring the back of the leg into play, the glutes and the hamstrings.
The hamstrings are a two-headed muscle which is located in the back of the leg and inserts below the knee. The main function of the hamstrings are to curl the leg.
The biceps femoris is a 2-headed muscle situated on the posterior and lateral aspect of the thigh. It flexes the leg and rotates it laterally. The gluteal muscles, which form the buttocks, adduct, rotate, and extend the thigh. The hack squat is a leg press that emphasizes the lower range of motion, and it's one of the most important mass and strength builders for the hamstrings or leg biceps. The lower you go in a leg press type movement, the more the back of the leg is brought into play. So with hack squats, it's important to lower your body and bend your legs as much as possible so your rear end comes down and almost sits right on your heels. Of course, when your knees are bent to this degree, they are put under considerable stress, so it's important to use a light enough weight in this exercise so that you avoid undue wear and tear on the knee joints. To further protect the knees, keep the exercise as steady and controlled as possible. Come to the bottom of the movement, pause, don't bounce. Then straighten the legs and press back upward with a smooth, controlled motion. Your feet should be positioned far enough forward with your weight on your heels rather than on your toes, so that the quadriceps are further taken out of the exercise, and the stress of the movement is targeted as much as possible on the hamstrings. Incidentally, you can lock your legs out at the top of the exercise, but it really isn't essential. At that point, your quadriceps are doing all the work, and the hamstrings really aren't involved anymore.
One series of muscles that tends to cramp up quite a bit is the back of the leg, the bicep femoris and the hamstrings. Because what happens is somebody is doing a lot of leg curls, really trying to build up that muscle group, and they don't stretch or relax the muscle at the end or termination of the exercise. They sit down and all of a sudden that muscle cramps up and they end up with a nice ball on the back of their leg. Very painful, and will be very quick to put somebody on the floor.
The leg curl is a very effective one-joint isolation exercise for the leg biceps. A primary function of the hamstrings is to curl the leg, and that's exactly what you do with the leg curl exercise. Since this is an isolation rather than a power exercise, concentrate on smooth, continuous repetitions and strict technique rather than trying to lift heavy weight. At the top of the movement, try to achieve the maximum peak contraction of the hamstring muscles, and then lower the weight again, resisting all the way, and keeping it under total control all the way to full extension. Again, go for the burn doing leg curls, the sensation that accompanies lactic acid buildup after a hard set, rather than trying to overpower the exercise. For further isolation and intensity, try doing leg curls one leg at a time on the appropriate type of machine, performing a full set of curls with one leg and then switching to the other leg and doing another full set without stopping to rest in between.
In the old days, they used to have these flat benches, and as you would flex or bend your legs towards you, your pelvis would tend to jump off of the top of the bench. And instead of training your back of your legs, you are now putting tension on your low back. Now they build banks or a bend into these machines to keep your pelvis flush on the bench itself. So now the concentrated effort is going on the bicep femoris and the hamstrings, the back of your legs, versus being transferred to your low back.
Stiff leg deadlifts are an often misunderstood exercise. They are designed to work your hamstrings and glutes, not the lower back. So for best results, use a moderately light weight and keep your legs locked out straight. Bend slowly forward and lower the weight as far as possible, feeling the hamstrings stretching to the maximum. Pause at the bottom, feel the stretch, then come slowly back up. Not to a full standing position, but only until you feel the hamstrings begin to relax. You can do stiff leg deadlifts using a barbell, or you can hold on to a pair of dumbbells. In either case, you'll need to stand on a box or a bench so that you can bend forward as far as possible without having the weight hit the floor and limit your range of motion. Again, the key to this exercise is strictness, control, and good form. Keep it strict and you'll keep it safe.
You should consider wearing a weight belt when you're doing stiff leg deadlifts to take some of the pressure off the low back and stabilize it.
The glutes are involved in the movement of the thigh as well as keeping the body in an upright position. In terms of bodybuilding, it's best explained by example. Take a hold of something for support. Then squat all the way down to the ground, keeping your feet in a flat position. When your rear end is almost touching the floor, pause. Then, when you first begin to stand up, that very first movement, that's a direct action of the gluteus maximus.
The glutes are involved in a wide variety of different leg exercises. When you do squats or leg presses, you're working your glutes. When you do hack squats or long stride lunges, they come even more into play. However, you'll frequently see individuals in gyms, a majority of them usually women, doing various kinds of leg exercises with pulleys and cables and using exotic-looking machines in an effort to firm and tone their glutes. But these exercises are far less effective than the ones we've already illustrated. especially deep hack squats where your rear end comes down and just about sits on your heels or touches the floor. Remember, when you're doing a squat, leg press, or hack squat movement, the quads do most of the work in the upper range of motion, down to the point where your knee is bent at about 90 degrees. As you go lower, the hamstrings take over and bear the brunt of the effort. But it's the lowest part of the range of motion, where your knees are bent to the maximum and pressed right up against your chest, that the glutes are called upon to do the majority of the work. Leg routine number 1. Barbell squats. 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps. Incline leg press. 4 sets of 10 reps. Hack squats. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Leg extensions. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Leg curls. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps.
For me, I do need to put more effort into my legs than other parts of my body. I get real lean in my upper body, where my lower body is just a little bit slower. It just likes to hold the muscle and maybe a little bit more fat compared to the other ratios in my body.
If I'm training my legs twice a week, I'll train them heavy the first time and then light the second time. This way I'm able to maintain the size that I have but shape what I have and make it more prettier. So the first day I would do my bulk exercises, which are the squat and the leg press. And on my lighter days, I would do my shape exercises like my leg extensions and lunges.
Leg routine number 2. Smith machine squats. 4 sets of 10 reps. Machine leg press. 4 sets of 10 reps. Lunges. 4 sets of 12 to 15 reps each leg. One leg curls. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps each leg. Stiff leg deadlifts. 4 sets of 10 reps.
In the beginning, back in 1986, Rich Gaspari came out with these impressive cut glutes that nobody else had. Now that's commonplace. People around the world, amateurs and professionals, are now getting these striated glutes. Renel Janvier and Andreas Munzer, it's very impressive if you have it.
When I'm trying to gain more size, I will cut my workouts down. So if I'm concentrating on size, I'll train my legs once a week. Whereas if I'm pre-contest, say, or if I'm trying to put more shape into the legs, then I'll train them twice a week.
When you start training, it's very important to train the legs from the beginning, because if the upper body gets more developed and the legs get behind it, it's very hard to catch up. And that's why I train the legs from the beginning and keep the body parts equal in shape from the beginning.
The function of the deltoid muscles of the shoulder is simply to lift the arm. The deltoids are a 3-headed muscle with 1 head located in the front, 1 at the side, and 1 at the rear. These three heads, in combination with the fact that the shoulder joint is the most mobile in the body, allow the deltoids to rotate the arms a full 360 degrees. Unfortunately, though it is the most mobile, the shoulder joint is the least stable. Therefore, shoulder training has to be done carefully to avoid injury.
The three-head deltoid muscle covers the shoulder joint ventrally, dorsally, and laterally. It flexes, extends, and rotates the arm medially and laterally. The military press is the most traditional of shoulder exercises. Individuals have probably been lifting objects overhead to develop and demonstrate strength since the dawn of history or before. You can picture cavemen hefting logs and rocks overhead to show off their physical prowess. The exercise is simple. After cleaning the weight or taking it off a rack, press it upward from shoulder height to full extension overhead. Then lower it back to the starting position. One important variable is how wide you grip the bar. You need a wide enough grip to work the shoulders without too much participation on the part of the triceps. Too narrow a grip tends to involve too much triceps rather than concentrating fully on the shoulders. Lifting a weight overhead, balance and coordination are extremely important. Lift the bar smoothly and under full control. Never jerk or throw the weight around.
When you're doing front presses or military presses, you're working more on just your front head of your delts when you're working out. Then when you get to use dumbbells, you get more freedom of motion to work, each arm individually, plus you can rotate the arms in different ways. We can get a different feel on the deltoid, working the side and also the front.
One of the things you run into is shoulders. Some people start to get a sharp pain inside their shoulder. And they say, gee, I can't work my shoulders anymore. What you may want to try and do is switch to dumbbells and just slightly change the biomechanics of how you're lifting and moving the weight up and down. And you may find that angle that'll work for you that will still allow you to train your shoulders very effectively.
Dumbbell presses allow you to work each side of the body independently, so that each side is forced to work with full intensity. The action of the deltoids is actually a rotary one. That is, they lift the arm in a semicircular arc, pivoting from the shoulder joint rather than straight up and down. This is why you need to use a fairly wide grip when doing a barbell press. Otherwise, the deltoids aren't able to produce the rotary motion for which they're designed. But you don't have this problem doing dumbbell presses. As you do the exercise, think of lifting the dumbbells in a slight arc on the way up and lowering them through the same arc on the way down. This ensures that you will be utilizing the rotary action of the deltoids and keeping the shoulders fully involved in the lift, rather than allowing the triceps to supply too much of the effort. As with any dumbbell movement, for maximum safety and effectiveness, take extra care to concentrate on controlling and balancing the weights throughout the entire range of motion of the exercise. Behind the neck presses are a very strict form of barbell press. When you do this movement seated on a bench, there's almost no way you can cheat or recruit extraneous muscles to help with the lift. So you should rely on strict technique and form doing this movement, rather than trying to use it as a mass and strength exercise. The behind the neck press is very popular with a great many bodybuilders, and it can be very beneficial to the development of your deltoid. However, rotating the shoulders to the rear like this puts them under a lot of additional stress. So be sure not to use too much weight in this movement when you first begin doing it. And if behind the neck presses cause you any shoulder pain, you should consider substituting some other exercise in your shoulder training program.
I prefer doing behind the neck presses, but I've had a lot of problems with behind the neck presses where I've had shoulder injuries, also tendonitis. So it is a type of exercise that you have to watch doing, you know, because a lot of people have problems with that because you're such in an awkward position with the elbows back that it does put a lot of stress on the shoulder joint itself. But it is a really good exercise for, you know, hitting the deltoids.
Doing shoulder presses using a Smith machine gives you the advantage of lifting directly against the force of gravity, which is the best way to stimulate maximum muscular development while not having to control and balance the weight as you would using a barbell. The Smith machine allows for very strict technique. It's particularly good for extending your range of motion, dropping the weight down lower than you would with a barbell, or doing partial reps, working with a shorter range than you would using a free weight. With the Smith machine, you can do military presses or behind the neck presses with equal facility. In fact, it's particularly effective for behind the neck presses because having the weight fixed in vertical tracks reduces the stress on the shoulder joint and therefore reduces the chance of injury to the deltoids. Smith machine presses are not by and large a substitute for barbell presses, but they make an excellent alternative. In most well-equipped gyms, you'll have a number of choices among machines designed for doing shoulder presses. They work the shoulders using a variety of different kinds of resistance and at a variety of different angles. As a rule, machines are most useful for doing strict full range of motion movements, using moderately light weights and keeping your repetitions relatively high. With shoulder training in particular, machines can be very useful if you're trying to work around an injury, because many machines will stabilize the shoulder joint just enough to allow you to do deltoid exercises, when doing the same movements with free weights would not be advisable. Dumbbell laterals are a one-joint isolation exercise in which the deltoids work directly through the rotary range of motion they were designed for. To train the side deltoids, you need to lift the weights directly out to each side, with your arms almost fully extended. You should feel the rotation of the shoulder joint with the weights moving in an arc rather than being lifted upward in a straight line. As you lift, concentrate on keeping the palms face down toward the floor. In fact, if you pronate your wrist slightly, that is, turn your hand so that your thumbs move downward, almost like pouring water from a kettle, you'll be able to isolate the side delts that much more specifically. Doing dumbbell laterals in a seated position, as demonstrated here, keeps the exercise particularly strict. However, many bodybuilders prefer to do standing dumbbell laterals. This is fine as long as you don't allow your upper body to sway too much so that you cheat the weight up and not work your shoulders hard enough. Either way, concentrate on the motion of the deltoids and in keeping the exercise as strict and technically correct as possible.
I think as long as you can come up on the side lateral and really stress the side delt by tensing it as hard as you can still get, good development on the side head. You can cheat slightly, but when you come up, you have to really tense the side head. What you have to do, very important in doing a side lateral, is keeping your thumbs facing slightly down on an angle with your pinkies facing slightly up. And as you look into the mirror, make sure that your biceps are parallel into the mirror with your elbows slightly on an angle up. And that would put a lot of stress more on the medial head.
One-arm dumbbell laterals are done using the same form as regular dumbbell laterals, except that you work only one side of the body at a time. The advantage of this is extra isolation and the ability to concentrate on making each head of the deltoid group work to its maximum ability in every set. Cable laterals are an even stricter form of lateral exercise. Pulling against a cable, you can generate an even, continuous tension throughout the entire range of motion of the exercise. And cheating is much more difficult when you're using cables rather than free weights. The technique is the same. Keep your arms fairly straight, palm facing the floor, and pronate the wrist slightly on the way up to create maximum contraction in the deltoids. There are actually a number of ways of doing cable laterals. The cable can cross in front of you or behind you, or you can position yourself to the side of the pulley and lift your arm straight up to the side. But with all cable laterals, concentrate on feeling a continuous, even movement throughout the range of motion of the exercise, and achieving a total peak contraction at the top of the exercise to develop maximum stimulation of the deltoid muscles.
Usually, say 6 to 8 weeks before a show, I use more of the cable movements. Cable movements would put even more of that carved look into the delt, more of that, we call like those scratches that you have in the deltoid muscle that you would get right before a competition. It's not something that you would do for mass, but it's something you would do to give you more of that look, of that definition on the delt, where you can see each individual muscle strand on the deltoid.
Machine laterals work the deltoids with the resistance mechanism rotating to correspond to the rotational action of the shoulder joint itself. Again, this is not a mass builder, but best for moderate weight, relatively high rep or very high rep pumping sets at the end of your shoulder workout. Using a lateral machine, concentrate on feeling continuous tension in the shoulder, working through a full range of motion and getting a full peak contraction at the top. Front raises are designed to work the front head of the deltoids just as laterals work the side head. The technique is much the same. You raise the weight in a wide arc, keeping the arm fairly straight and palm turned down toward the floor. You come up slightly higher than shoulder height. Hold for a moment, then lower the weight under control back to the starting position. One mistake that's frequently made with front raises is lifting the weight too far out to the side. You don't actually want to lift it straight up from the shoulder. Instead, bring the dumbbell in slightly toward the center line of your body until you feel the front head of the deltoid doing most of the work. Of course, you'll see a lot of individual variations in front raises and other exercises as well. The key to exercising effectively in cases like this is to ask yourself whether you feel the target muscle is working hard enough and in sufficient isolation during the movement. If you do, fine. If not, perhaps you ought to re-examine your training technique. Upright rows involve the action of the front deltoids as they lift the bar up in front of you. Stand upright, holding a bar at arm's length in front of you with an overhand grip, hands about shoulder width apart. Lift the bar straight up along the line of your body to about shoulder height. Hold for a moment at the top, then lower the weight under control back to the starting position. This isn't an exercise where you want to use a great deal of weight. Instead, try to do the movement using very strict technique, lifting and lowering the bar under full control at all times. Bent over laterals are a lateral movement for the rear head of the deltoid. However, targeting the rear delts can be more difficult than trying to isolate and train the other deltoid heads. Therefore, a few technical tips are in order. When you bend over, stay bent over. Don't lift up as you raise the weights. And instead of lifting the dumbbell straight out to each side, bring them slightly forward during the movement, so they end up even with your head at the top rather than your shoulders. And as you lift, pronate your wrists. That is, turn your thumbs down fairly decisively to further involve the posterior head of the deltoids. Some bodybuilders prefer doing bent over laterals seated. Others standing. Seated is somewhat stricter, but the pressure on your diaphragm makes breathing more difficult. And doing the exercise in a standing position gives you a better choice of angles. But either method works, so choose the one that feels best to you. Bent over cable laterals are done very much like bent over dumbbell laterals. As you bend over and raise your arms to the side, the rear head of the deltoids is called upon to do most of the work in the lift. As with any other bodybuilding exercise, you'll make the fastest progress by learning to feel exactly which muscles are involved in any movement you're doing, and make whatever adjustments to form or technique are necessary to focus the maximum training intensity on the muscles you're trying to develop.
The trapezius muscles lift the entire shoulder girdle. This is why they call the basic trap exercise the shrug. The traps can be worked either as part of the shoulder workout, as shown next, or as part of the back routine.
The shrug movement is one of the simplest in bodybuilding. The basic function of the trapezius muscle is to lift the entire shoulder girdle. So to train traps, you simply take hold of a barbell, shrug your shoulders up toward your ears, hold the position of full contraction for a moment, then lower the weight back to the starting position. Some bodybuilders have been known to neglect traps when they first start training. However, they generally run into trouble later on when they're forced to do trapezius training on a priority basis to try and catch up. Sometimes they never do. However, the easiest way to avoid this problem is to include shrugs as part of your overall training program right from your very first workout. One alternative to barbell shrugs is to do shrugs using dumbbells for resistance. Using a different kind of weight really makes little difference to the exercise. The shrugging movement is so simple that it really doesn't matter what kind of weight you use. Using dumbbells may be more convenient if you have a rack of heavy dumbbells right in front of you to choose from. However, as you get stronger in this exercise, you may find you're using such heavy poundages that it's a lot easier to do the movement with a barbell using wrist straps than it is a pair of dumbbells. Again, this is a matter of personal preference and individual choice. Shrugs are so simple, it's hard to do them incorrectly. Cables are a highly versatile type of exercise equipment. In fact, cables were one of the first sophisticated training devices developed for the modern gym. Gravity works up and down, but using a cable and pulleys, you can change the angle of resistance from vertical to horizontal or anywhere in between. By substituting a short handle attached to a cable for a barbell, you can use cables to do shrugging movements as demonstrated here. The shrugs are done the same as with free weights. You pull your shoulders up as far as possible to your ears, then slowly release and lower them again, resisting the pull of the weight all the way down. Incidentally, you can also do shrugs on a variety of machines. For example, the bench press station on universal type training equipment generally provides handles at just about the right height to allow you to take hold of them and do shrugging exercises. In any event, remember that the type of equipment you use in an exercise is generally less important than how that movement feels, or rather, how you can make it feel. Shoulder routine number 1. Behind the neck barbell press. 4 sets of 10 reps. Dumbbell or machine laterals. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Front dumbbell raises. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Bent over laterals. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Barbell shrugs. 4 sets of 10 reps.
One of the things is that you have to work proper technique. And I wasn't using the proper technique exactly, so I was hitting a lot more of my front delts instead of my side or medial delts. So then I had to really concentrate on the side lateral movements, doing the movement correctly, so that I could really get that wideness on the medial head, so that when you're on stage, you have that appearance of looking a lot wider. With that wider appearance, you'll make your waist look smaller and look more symmetrical.
Shoulder routine number 2. Seated dumbbell press. 4 sets of 10 reps. One-arm cable or dumbbell laterals. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Upright rows. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Bent over cable laterals. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Dumbbell or cable shrugs. 4 sets of 10 reps.
Now go for it. The champions told you exactly what to do to develop your legs and your shoulders. Put it to work. right away. In the next tape, you're going to learn to put the final details to your bodybuilding program. You now know how to develop mass and power and size into your total body. However, you have to detail it and perfect it by developing your calves, forearms, and midsection. These three parts have to be highly and fully developed in order to develop a perfect shaped body.
We all start skinny or fat or somewhere in between, but basically we don't like the way that we look now, but then you have the choice to do something about it.
Start it and finish it. Do it on a regular basis.
Just go out and do it.